Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Get Your Play Online. I am so happy to be here again with you this evening to read a bedtime story. So, tonight's bedtime story is called Milo and the Magical Stones. And this story is this is our friend Milo here, and here he is holding his magical stone. So it is written and illustrated by Marcus Pfister. And this is a fun book because it actually has two possible endings to it. So we will explore them both. So let's get started. Okay. In the middle of the sea, there was an island, and on this island lived Milo and the other cliff mice. They loved their island. It provided them with food and shelter, and protection from the rough storms that pounded waves against the cliffs. During the summer, Milo and his friends worked hard gathering food. Sometimes they would take a break from their work and skip flat stones out over the sea. In the evenings, the mice would stretch out on the cliffs that had been warmed by the sun and watch the stars in the night sky. If it was warm enough, they would spend the entire night outside telling stories and enjoying the mild summer air. Look how nice that looks. They're enjoying the nice, warm summer air. But when the first winter storms arrived, the mice would spend most of the time huddled in the dark, damp caves, dreaming of light and warmth. You see them? In the winter, they're huddled together trying to stay warm. And there's lots of animals that do this in the winter. After one of these storms, Milo crept out of his cave looking for food. He poked his nose curiously into every crevice. Then, in a particularly deep crevice, he saw something extraordinary, a strange glowing stone. Look at this. Do you see the stone? And see how it's kind of sparkly? Using a long stick, he carefully pried it out and carried it back to his cave. See how deep in the rock it is and how he managed to get it out of there? Oh, look at him. He's trying to hold on to it. Looks like he's almost losing his balance there. Milo was amazed to see that the darker it got, the more brightly the stone glowed. And not only did it provide light, it also gave off a comforting warmth. Happily, Milo curled up into the corner of his cave with his treasure. But he was not alone for long, because the bright light soon attracted the other mice. See, his little mice friends are joining him because they see the bright light and they are interested to learn about it too. Everyone wanted a stone of his own, and they asked Milo to show them where he had found his. But just as they were about to set off, wise Balthazar stood up and said, "Don't forget," he said, "the stones belong to the island. If you take something from the island, you must give something in return." So they're taking stones from the island, and they belong to the island, not to them. So if they're taking something, they need to put something there in return, is what they're saying. So now here we have actually two endings to how this book can end. And so I'm going to first read the sad ending, and then we will read the happy ending. So this is the sad ending. Only Milo heeded Balthazar's warning. He immediately began thinking about what gift he could give to the island. But the other mice hurried off to find the glowing stones. They squeezed into the tunnel and started digging wildly. Using sharp rocks, they chipped away at the walls of the tunnel. They tossed the smaller stones aside. They wanted only the biggest ones. Then the mice dragged the glowing stones into their caves. They grew greedy and jealous and spent so much time worrying about who had the most stones that they couldn't even enjoy the comfort the stones brought to them. Milo watched his friends sadly. He worried about what Balthazar had said and wondered what would happen. He sighed. There was nothing he could do but get back to work on the gift he had thought of to give to the island. Soon, the mice decided that they needed more of the magical stones. They crept back into the tunnel and dug day and night, piling the magical stones in and around the caves, until the whole island glowed. They boasted about their stones and argued about who had the most, the biggest, and the brightest. See, so there's one of them with so many stones. The mice were consumed with greed, and as they dug deeper and deeper, the walls of the mountain got thinner and thinner. Before long, the mountain was hollowed out completely. Then suddenly, with a big thunderous roar, the mountain collapsed. Giant boulders fell, burying the tunnels in a heap of rubble. Waves pounded against the shore, flooding most of the island. So you can see, because they took all these stones out, it took away the foundation of the island, and now it's falling apart. Only one cave was left. Inside, Milo and Balthazar crouched trembling in a corner. The stones could have brought such happiness, said Balthazar quietly. As he spoke, Milo went back to work, carving a stone to give to the island in thanks for its magical gift. So here's Milo trying to make things a little better by carving a stone to give to the island, thanking it. So they realized that the stones could have brought so much happiness to them, but they didn't because they all got greedy and it ended up just being really not very nice. But thankfully there's also a happy ending, and we are going to read the happy ending now. And you can see how if they're focused on the right things, that it can have a much happier ending. Balthazar is right, said Milo. So we're going back to the happy ending, and what had happened just before this was that everyone wanted a stone of his own, and they asked Milo to show them where he had found his. But just as they were about to set off, wise Balthazar stood up and said, "Don't forget," he said, "the stones belong to the island. If you take something from the island, you must give them something in return." So, giving them something in return, and that is where we left off before going to the sad ending. So now we are at the happy ending. So here's Milo. Balthazar is right, said Milo. But what could Milo give to the island? He thought about it for many days, until at last he had an idea. He went down to the shore where the sea washed up all kinds of stones, and looked for one that was about the same size as the one he had taken. He sat down and started chipping away at the stone. Curious, the other mice gathered around. Milo worked for hours until he had carved a beautiful sun into the stone. Then Milo led his friends to the hidden crevice in the mountain and put his carved stone in the place where he had found the glowing stone. So here he's only taking one stone and he's putting something in its place. The other mice began digging. Directly below the crevice they found a tunnel that ran deep into the mountain. The further into the mountain they went, the more glowing stones they found. Each mouse took one and carefully carried it home. So they each only took one this time. Then, like Milo, they found ordinary stones along the shore and started to decorate them. Some mice carved, etched, or drew on their stones. Others wrapped them or decorated them with flowers, leaves, or roots. They created beautiful works of art, and then they carried them deep into the mountain and placed their gifts where they had found the original glowing stones. So here they all are with their glowing stones, you can see here. From then on, the windy winter weather did not bother the mice, who snuggled happily in their bright, warm caves. Once they got together and told stories, just like they did in the summertime. Often they got together and they told stories, just like they did in the summertime. These gatherings made the long, cold nights seem shorter and winter seem less damp and dark. Every year, the mice celebrated the beginning of winter. They met in Balthazar's cave and danced and sang along. When it got dark, they took the magical stones on a parade along the cliffs as a special tribute to their beloved island. So, as you can see, there's two different endings to this story, and this was the happy ending because the mice, they didn't get greedy, and they weren't just worried about themselves, but they were worried about taking care of the island and thanking the island for the beautiful gift it had given them of the stones. And so being greedy is when you're really focused on yourself and getting, more things for yourself instead of looking out for other people and for the world around us. So it's kind of about how, if we, it's important not just to take things, but to take care of our world and to make sure that we are giving things in return as well. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you learned a lot from reading this wonderful book, and that everything, the choices we make have an impact on the world around us. So that is really important to remember, and the choices we can make can also help have a happy or sad ending for things like the world, the planet around us. So thank you again, and have a wonderful night, and I look forward to seeing you back here again in about 2 weeks. So before we are together again in 2 weeks, remember there are bedtime stories most nights, and there will be someone else reading next Wednesday night. Thanks so much. Good night.